So I'll go ahead and let you guys introduce yourselves.
All right, I'm Jason Goyke, a co-founder of Devers. This is my partner in crime.
How important. That sounds so important. I'm J. Scott Rumps. I'm another co-founder because there's two of us. So I guess I'm the rest of that package.
We're bi-founders.
Yeah, we're bi.
All right. There you go. Oh man, if only the dad jokes were here too, you know. So what is Devers?
Devers as a company is the two of us and a bunch of artists from all over the globe. I mean, all over the globe. Devers, the actual place, is something that we came up with, which is basically like all these limitless dimensions. And all these limitless dimensions and realities all share the same nexus or focal point of the Devers, yeah. And that's where the nexus comes in. So every universe and every plane of existence all shares the same absolute center point, and that's where the nexus comes into play.
All possibilities.
Yeah, all possibilities. So yeah, that's the Devers.
Okay. So how exactly did this idea of a central nexus and all that stuff come about? Like, what was your inspiration and all that kind of stuff?
We wanted a big playground.
Yeah. I mean, literally, we needed something. We grew up playing Rifts. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the RPG Rifts, but we grew up in Detroit, and our teenage years coincided with the release of this RPG in the Detroit area called Rifts. And what made Rifts kind of special was the fact that it wasn't sci-fi, it wasn't fantasy, it was kind of everything all rolled up into one. And it was limitless. So anything you could come up with, you could do in this system. And we always loved the idea of that. So the way they went about doing it was the earth had these big rifts that were opening up that was letting in creatures from all these different dimensions.
The ley lines.
Yeah, the ley lines. And the way we went about it is we thought, hey, what if every universe and every reality had the same middle point? And at that middle point, since it was shared by all of them, you would have, the most intelligent and brightest of all creatures from all these different dimensions would be the ones that would discover this center point. And here the brightest and greatest of all dimensions would meet. And what would they do there? What would all aliens have in common? Mm-hmm. A love of violence and greed and fame. So in a lot of ways, the Nexus was kind of like kind of a metaphor for America, where you have like all these different countries and the best and brightest from all these different places all converged to create the Kardashians.
Yeah.
So
and UFC.
Yeah, and UFC. So the reasoning behind it is we wanted everything to be limitless. We wanted our creatures to be limitless. We didn't want any restrictions when it came to any of our artists or our creativity when we were putting something together.
Okay, you just want somewhere where it would make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it all comes down to riffs.
It comes down to riffs.
Ninja Turtles, the comic books and the role-playing game.
Yeah.
We really love that art. So we wanted black and white art to be, prevalent in what we were doing, which you don't really see a whole lot in sci-fi. So right there was a kind of a contrast between the art style that we wanted to go and what the theme was. Mm-hmm. But all in all, obviously we believe it works.
Yeah. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, like that type of humor and kind of
satire of it all.
Satire is really heavy throughout the game and throughout our universe.
I mean, Garbage Pail Kids.
Yeah, Garbage Pail Kids.
That was an inspiration.
Yeah. Basic, RoboCop, like the whole glorification of violence that we grew up with, like as kids, where it wasn't a bad thing. It was just cool. Like it was cool to see somebody get their head blown off, or watch toxic waste spill on somebody and just watch them melt while they were screaming. Like that was
Like, Nexus is like a love note to our adolescence.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's really where it started.
Mm-hmm.
Is Jay and I, we grew up playing a lot of role-playing games, and we would have to alternate. Like one person would be the GM, and then the other person would play the campaign. And role-playing games with just two people is okay, but it's not really the way they were intended to be played.
Yeah.
So what we did is we kind of stripped down the stuff that we liked to where we wouldn't need to have a GM per se, and we made like a arena fighting game.
Okay.
Which was really dice heavy and our RPG combat kind of heavy. And we went through and we had all types of different like equipment and, you know, classes that we could use. And I think at the time we didn't even know about battle tech really, but we had like
we were aware of it. But as far as playing the tabletop game, no.
Yeah. So we had like locations and stuff for our warriors.
But RuneQuest, I mean, we were into RuneQuest.
Yeah.
And that had
that's
location.
true.
Yeah.
Okay. So where did the rules start off with? It started off as that arena combat, and then it just kept getting different.
So, you know, we did that. I wish I could find some of the stuff we had when
Like
we were
the
kids,
original,
like
yeah.
the absolute original arena thing. But all that got lost. I couldn't even
Mm-hmm.
tell you other than some big broad strokes of what we did back then.
Mm-hmm.
Where it came about was Jay took me to lunch, and I think he had seen Kingdom Death when I was on vacation, I think to see my father for the holidays or something.
Yeah.
And he had sent me an email about it, and he was like, "Man, you have to check this out. This thing's incredible." And he's like, "And I want to meet with you when you get back." And I was like, "Okay." So I looked at it while I was on vacation. I was like, "Holy shit, this guy's really into hentai." But it was cool. Like, I mean, just the whole scope and like artistic vision of the project was just amazing. And when I came back in town, Jay took me to lunch, and he was like, "Hey, you know, you remember the game that we used to play when we were kids that we created ourselves?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I think it would be really cool to like try and do that and just sit down and like as adults see if we can put the game like together." And at the time I was really lost in like programming. I was making video games, and I had been teaching myself Unity, and I was really like kind of getting to the next level with all that type of stuff.
Okay.
And he talked me into abandoning all that and get into recreating our board game. And I was kind of reluctant at first, but then we started sitting down and kind of like hashing out rules, and I started applying a lot of the programming stuff that I was doing to the game design and the rules. And we started fleshing things out. I mean, it started with really simple combat stuff, but we probably had more things thematically that we wanted to do with the game. And then we found mechanics to make them real and prevalent in the game. And that's been a constant evolution ever since we started. I mean, as recently as because we've been working on it for probably 4 years now, 3 years publicly. But even as recent as probably, you know, 6 or 8 months ago, we found some different mechanics to put in to really drive some of the themes that we thought were really important to the game, like the crowd and the arena itself.
Okay.
That's something that was really important to us.
So, do you consider your game a board game, or what kind of game do you consider?
Now I do.
Yeah.
At this point,
I don't know. I get lost in it. Do you
it's probably more of a board game than like Warhammer, so it's probably a little more like Warhammer Arena or like.
Well, like I said, do you consider Blood Bowl a board game?
It has boards, so yeah.
So this is like, to me, Nexus is a board game in the same spirit that Blood Bowl is a board game.
Okay.
So, you know, it has a board. It's definitely more board game than Warhammer. It's not an RPG. It's in that one aspect, it's very similar to Blood Bowl. So I'd categorize it in whatever somebody would want to categorize Blood Bowl in.
And Blood Bowl was a huge inspiration to the game. I mean, we played that.
Yeah, that was a staple. We loved Blood Bowl.
Yeah.
So it's a board game for adults.
It was a great two-player, almost role-playing experience for us.
Yep.
Which was big.
Yep.
So this is more like a board game for adults.
Oh, it is definitely for adults.
For adults.
Unless you're like me and you're like a completely unscrupulous parent.
Yeah, we still make promotional coloring books, but
yeah. Like I watch Rick and Morty with my 10-year-old, so I don't mind. Like we'll sit down and we'll play a game of Nexus. We need it when my wife comes in the room. My son knows all the tricks. God, she's probably gonna watch this. Okay.
Probably what the whole no, we were watching the Food Network the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what exactly
we're learning how to make pickles.
Pickle Rick.
So what exactly are the they're called motivations in your game, but so like those are the player characters, right?
No, not really. The player characters are the Lannisters.
Yeah.
So you're a Lannister in our game.
Okay.
And the motivations are your genetically engineered warriors. So one of the big things we did when we were creating the game is we didn't want to make it kind of the barbarian is going to be big and strong and he's going to have an axe, and this guy is going to look this way, like all the rangers kind of look the same in games, and everything kind of looks the same. So we were really, really big on giving our artists like the freedom to create like really interesting characters. So rather than having like a specific type of thing, what we did is we broke things down into what motivates this genetically engineered creature to want to kill. And that kind of inspired our lore, which was, okay, you have the gnomes and they grow these things in the meat gardens. And when they grow these monsters in the meat gardens, they have to figure out like, okay, how do we motivate this thing to go kill the other thing? Like, what is it that's going to drive this thing to kill?
Okay.
And so what they end up doing is they end up classifying all their creations into these motivations. Okay. So like the zealot is something that they found this thing will kill for religious beliefs. Okay. The famished is something where they couldn't find any way to motivate this thing to kill other than hunger. So they just starve it, and it only gets to eat if it wins the fight. It gets to eat its opponent. Okay. So that's your motivation. Your hoarder is, something that fights for stuff, and so on and so forth. The supremacist is somebody who believes that they're just like this perfect specimen and they want to kill other things just to prove how superior they are to everything else. So that's where motivations came in instead of like classes.
Yeah, there were classes, and then we're like, wait, we don't have classes, we have motivations.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what that did is it gave our artists like a lot of freedom. We were like, okay, draw a hoarder. Draw something that fights that because it wants to collect stuff. Well, that doesn't, you don't have to make it big. You don't have to make it small. Like you can make it whatever you want. And you're just kind of using this motivation of the character to motivate the artist. See what I did there?
So they're actually called Helots, right? That's the name.
Helots. Yeah.
Helots.
Yeah.
And so the Lannisters are the essentially the Pokemon trainer.
So the Lannisters are basically, we always call them a combination of, who's the guy in Rocky that used to coach Rocky?
Mickey.
Yeah, Mickey. They're kind of a combination of Mickey and Don King. So they're completely greed obsessed and fame, and you don't care about your helot. As a Lannister, like your helot is just a tool that you send out there. You don't care if it lives or dies. Like you just need the fame and the money that thing brings.
Okay.
So it's very much like Don King. Like you don't give a shit what happens to Mike Tyson, just as long as he makes you money. So whether he's winning or losing, if he's making you money, you really don't care about, your helot as a person.
Okay.
So
when it comes to all this kind of stuff, did you create this world away from like humanity and all that kind of stuff? Like, are humans even involved in this at all, or is it all just?
We thought about it. We had a couple different ideas of how to bring humans into it, but as of right now, they're just not really.
They're not that prevalent. So
yeah.
some of our writers and some of our artists have kind of brought them in and in certain areas, and we just kind of let it happen.
Yeah.
Like we don't explicitly keep humans out, but they're definitely not any kind of focus to this environment. When we were working on the RPG, we actually had an alien creation generator or creature generator, so people wouldn't be humans. But you know, I mean, I guess humans could eventually be smart enough to get to the Nexus.
They're just not cool enough yet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see if we. I don't know if we'll live long enough to get the technology to actually get there. But you know, given enough time and nothing horrible happening, I guess we could eventually reach the Nexus.
So let's talk about maybe gameplay a little bit. So what exactly is the gameplay style of this? Because when you look at your board and you look at all your pictures, you see different terrains and all that kind of stuff. You see the little frame around your board, you know, just.
So the first thing is it's grid based. And here, what I'll do is this will probably make it easier. I've got we set it up on Tabletopia. So what I'll do is I'll share our little Tabletopia screen.
Alrighty.
So we can kind of look at it together. So yeah, so this is the board, and the first thing that you'll see is like everything's broken down into these grids. So everything's square and grid based.
Okay.
When you're using your pellets, you're going to I did that right. You're going to be spending movement points and action points. And basically movement points are just going to be moving squares. You're also going to spend movement points rotating your character to turn 90 degrees, cost of movement. The terrain is, this is all different stuff. This is the stuff that I think makes the game really cool. You've got things like columns. These are just static objects. But then you have hazards like these floor spikes, which these will move around and pop up in different locations while you're fighting.
Okay.
These are weapon crates that you can bust open, and they have different objects inside of them, or they have booby traps inside of them that may do damage to your helmet or both helmets. Some of them have what we call rock ghouls in them, which are like these little
giant
kind of
space rats.
Yeah, they're basically giant space rats, and they'll bust out of the crate and they'll just attack all the different helmets competing in the fight. You've got braziers, which these can be knocked over, and then the fire actually moves around during the course of the fight as you're killing each other. You've got guts, which kind of slow you down. It costs more movement points to move through guts.
Okay.
You got blood, which makes you slip into adjacent squares. You don't exactly know which way you're going to slip when you walk through blood. And then guts and blood also appear as you're ripping limbs off of your opponents or killing your opponents. They'll leave blood and guts laying on the floor.
Okay.
Floor saws are pretty neat. These will pop up in random locations and then shoot across the arena. And if they end up running into like a column or a wall or something like that, they explode and they do shrapnel damage along the grid area. And then you'll notice the grid's numbered on each side. So we have what we call location dice that you'll roll along with a directional die, which you use to kind of make all of these different hazards work within the game.
So directions are important in this game.
Yeah. You'll notice the top of the board's labeled north, and then we trust everybody else to figure it out from there.
So you're trying to avoid all these hazards while you're battling each other. So
Okay.
Or not, depending on what you're doing.
You also can interact with some of them to put some hurt on your opponent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can drag your opponent. There's lots of different ways to engage in combat in the game. You have a full menu of options. So this is what we call our action menu that you can go through during the game. You've got a bunch of different movement commands. You have grapple commands. These open up once you have your opponent grappled.
Okay.
You can drag them. You can do a takedown. You can throw them. You can crush them. There are weapons available in the game. They're usually like 1 or 2 use or maybe a single use kind of weapon, but those all do different things. But yeah, so basically it's kind of RPG-ish in this sense, where you've got a lot of different attacks and different things that you can do, and everything's dependent on dice chucking.
Should we talk about the ratio die and initiative?
Yeah. One of the things that we really like about the game is a lot of games you'll have initiative is set up at the beginning of the game, and then you just follow that pattern throughout the whole game. Somebody goes first, and then the next person goes second. What we have is we have a ratio die and a trait die, and you're going to roll both of these to determine your initiative. And this changes from command round to command round.
Okay.
So you never know at the end of your command round, like how you want to leave your character positioned, because you don't know who's going to get initiative next.
Yeah, you don't know who's going next.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You don't know who's going to get the next move because you're rolling for initiative each time.
Okay, so you could almost go twice in a row.
Well, you wouldn't go twice in a row. The opponent would always get their turn. But
Okay.
yeah, you could go twice in a row.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Potentially you could.
I wasn't thinking.
Mhm.
I was just,
Like you play the whole round, and then you do the initiative die again to see.
if you end the round and then you start the next round, you would go twice. Yep.
Okay. So I saw a couple terms on there. The SDS. So what does the SDS stand for?
So the SDS is your standard dice scale. Let's see, which card do we put that on? There it is. So your standard dice scale is kind of, I guess, if anything, this was inspired by Risk, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So in Risk, depending on how many armies you have fighting each other, you're going to roll that many dice.
Okay.
So
it's really tracking advantage and disadvantage in our game,
right.
Okay.
essentially.
So if you have an advantage, if you're +1 SDS, you're going to roll 3d6 instead of 2d6, but you're going to keep the highest two values.
Okay.
If you're +2 SDS, you're going to roll 4d6, and again, you're going to keep the highest two values. So what this did is it set it up to where you get a real mathematical advantage when you get an advantage in the game, but the maximum and minimum never change. The best you can do is roll a 12, and the worst you can do is roll a 2, no matter how big the advantage is. So, there's always a chance. Somebody could be +3 SDS, they're rolling 5d6, and they're going to get to keep their highest two values. And you might be, negative SDS, and you're going to roll 3d6. But, if you roll 3 6s, by some miracle, you're going to be able to block no matter what they roll with the 5d6.
Yeah, the potential is equal.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the sliding dice scale, and that moves up and down depending on positioning. You'll be plus SDS if you're behind an opponent while attacking. As your body locations get depleted, that will give you different SDS advantages. So if you lose an upper limb, then you're going to be negative to attack. If you lose a lower limb, you're going to be negative to defend. If you lose your midsection, you're negative to attack and defend. So what happens is you start ripping body parts off of your opponent.
Okay.
You get advantages to attack or to defend, depending.
Okay. So there's also that tactics of attacking certain body parts and all that kind of stuff.
In positioning, if you're behind your opponent, you're going to get advantage.
Okay. Because it's more based on whichever way your character's facing is the way they're facing. It's not like an omnidirectional one, right?
Yes.
Exactly. So each attack has a certain range. Most of them is the square directly in front of you.
Because you spend movement points to pivot.
Okay.
Yeah. So rotating 90 degrees is going to cost you a movement point. If you want to go 180 degrees, that'll cost you 2 movement points.
Okay. So each pivot's a point, and you get those based on how?
So when you roll for your initiative, the first thing you're going to look at is your trait die. That's the main indicator of initiative. So instinct is first, deafness is second, cunning is third, and then willpower, physicality, and swagger are all tied for 4th place. So if this die's a tie, then you're going to go to your ratio die, and that's going to determine the tiebreaker for initiative. If it's still tied after that, you just do a roll off. It's pretty rare that happens. But that ratio die, once you have it, you're going to lock it in. So let's say I've got the first initiative, and you always get 6 command points. And those command points can be spent on movement commands or action commands. And your ratio die determines the ratio that you have to split it up.
Okay.
So since I rolled a 3, I'm going to have 3 action and 3 movement points. If I were going to roll a 2, then it's my choice. I can spend 2 points on movement and 4 points on action, or I can spend 2 points on action and 4 points on movement.
Okay.
But I have to use that ratio.
Okay. And do you have to use all your moves, or?
Yes, there are penalties if you don't.
Okay.
The crowd gets mad. You'll start losing reputation, which is your cred pile. So this is your main winning mechanic. These are your victory points, basically, is your cred pile. You earn cred throughout the fight by doing damage to your opponent, gloating. There's assorted ways to gain cred, but you lose cred for not using all of your action points or your movement points. So you'll lose 1 cred for each point that you don't lose. If you don't have any cred, you'll actually start losing your overall health because the crowd is so upset with your helmet that they're throwing things at it, and it's actually taking damage from the dissatisfaction of the fans.
Okay. And is your overall condition like split up between all your body parts?
So your overall condition is almost the best way to think of it is like your endurance. So this is just your helmet's overall fatigue. Whenever you take damage to a specific location, you also take damage to that overall condition.
Okay.
But you'll sometimes only take damage to the overall condition. Sometimes you're going to spend your overall condition to perform certain actions or attacks.
Okay.
If you're trying to liberate from somebody's grapple, you lose overall condition every time you attempt to liberate. When you do wild attacks, you're actually losing overall condition to do a wild attack. But if that ever reaches 0, your helmet basically is defeated due to exhaustion. The best way to win is by killing the opposing helmet, and that's to kill a helmet, you get the head or the chest to 0, and that will actually kill a helmet.
Okay. So there are ways to get it other than just getting them down to 0, as long as you get certain body parts.
Right. Yeah. If you get the head or the chest, those are vital body locations, basically. So if they get depleted,
do the attacks actually have like certain locations that they hit specific?
So you have 3 types of attack. You have a wild attack, which doesn't cost as many action points. It only costs 1 action point, but it's kind of a flailing attack, and it only does overall damage to your opponent.
Okay.
Then you have a standard attack, which is going to cost 2 action points, and that's going to do a random body location damage. You're going to roll a d6 because you can never hit the head while doing a standard attack.
Okay.
So you roll a d6, and one of these body locations will randomly take the damage from a standard attack.
Okay.
And then you have a focused attack, which that costs 3 action points, and you can target a specific body location with that, including the head.
Okay. So looking at this board frame, it's like, how did you guys come up with that? Is it like made for like 4 players or just 2?
So at first it was supposed to be a 2-player game at first.
Okay.
But then everybody's like, oh, you got to add more players to it because this is too fun.
Yeah.
So now it's evolved into kind of a battle royale.
So it's 2 or 4. The original frame was set up for 2 players, and then the east and west sides were like card holders, and I forget what was the other side.
I saw in your old videos coins. You guys are putting coins in there.
Yeah. So we had the card holders, and then we had the coins. And when we tried to, one of the big issues that we had converting it from a 2-player game to a 4-player game was our turning point system. So there was an old bar game that my father used to play, where you basically rolled dice, and it had like this clacker board where you would flip the numbers every time you rolled them. And once you rolled all the numbers from 1 to 6, what's it called? Shut the box.
Shut the box.
Okay. So once you rolled,
you used to call them clackers.
Yeah, clackers. So once you rolled every number from 1 to 6, you kind of won. And I really kind of liked that mechanic. So we kind of revolved our turning points around that. And in the original game, you would roll just for your action points, and you just roll a d6, and that would be how many action points you had, and that was your points for movement or attacks. And a lot of people hated that mechanic because they didn't like one die roll controlling so much of what they could or couldn't do with their helmet.
Okay.
So what we did is we evolved it to this ratio die system to where you always had 6 command points, and it was your choice how you wanted to spend those command points, but you had to adhere to the certain ratio. And what that ended up doing is it still had that kind of random, my hellet's kind of got a mind of its own and doesn't always want to listen to me mechanic to it, but you didn't feel like you were getting screwed, during your command round because you rolled a low value. Because essentially rolling a 1 is the same thing as rolling a 5, the way we have it set up now.
Okay.
And that swing isn't as drastic as it used to be.
Okay.
So the other thing it allows us to do is it allows us to keep this turning point mechanic where, I think I rolled, I just rolled a 2, and
before you had the 3.
Yeah, before I had the 3. So these coins would be placed in the slot. With Tabletopia, this was the best way I could kind of set it up, given the way the game was. But as all your slots get filled up, your helmet achieves what's called a turning point. And it gives your helmet some bonuses, but it also has you draw a turning point card.
Okay.
Which the turning point card are just kind of random narrative things that happen within the game. So, like this one is, oops, I don't want to take any, I just want to zoom in. Okay, this one's called What's That Smell? And some of the turning cards work for your helmet, some of them will work against your helmet, but they all do something. So this one is a horrible stench permeates the floor, drains, causing each helmet to vomit profusely. All the hellets lose 3 from their overall. Now you can spend some of your will to ignore the effects. So each turning point card is going to have a different kind of story narrative that may affect one hellet, may affect all the hellets playing. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. But it adds a little spice. And that happens every time you fill up all of these rolls as you're playing throughout the game.
Okay. So when it said you spin one wheel, what is that?
I'm sorry?
When it said spin one wheel to ignore it, what's your will?
Okay, so when you're rolling these trait dice at the beginning for your to determine initiative, you're going to also, like this one was a swag, so you're going to increase your swagger counter by 1. And each command round at the beginning, as you're rolling for your initiative, you're going to be rolling different traits. And as this mounts up, you can spend these to do certain things.
Okay.
Some of them can be to avoid turning point cards that may come up. And then some of them may be unique to your hellet. Let me find hellet cards over here. So, like a famished, let's see here. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I just wanted to flip. Okay. So this is these are the zealots effects that it can spend with its traits. So if you spend 2 will, 2 instinct, and 2 swagger, you can perform a blood ritual, which that'll restore any missing appendage that your helmet may have lost during the fight. But they actually have to find a blood puddle to stand in to perform that blood ritual.
Okay. The trait bonuses are their starting values.
Yeah.
And those start at 1?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for a zealot, he'd start with 1 willpower, 1 deafness, and 1 swagger.
What made you guys decide to use swagger?
We like it.
Again,
we like the word.
Again, sat down one night and so sick of intelligence, strength, like all the standard things, and we were like, what's something unique that we could do that we could kind of have some fun with in the game? And swagger jumped right out.
Okay. So this is all an improvement from the first time you guys went to Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, this has changed a ton. We've talked several times about how glad we are we did not fund on that original concept of the game, because going back, rethinking it, getting everyone's feedback from the original Kickstarter and taking in to account all the different things we learned, we definitely feel like we made a much better board game
Yeah,
experience.
This is a much stronger offering.
Just sitting here talking to you about it, and just you showing me how the board game, how all the trackers and stuff work now, it's a lot less confusing than it was the first time I was looking at it on your videos with all the coins. But just seeing it like this laid out, it's a lot better.
Okay.
So.
And in Tabletopia, you know, it gets kind of cumbersome having all the coins lined up here, but it's almost like being at a craps table when you're playing it, because all the coins move from one pile to another. So, you know, like you have your cred pile, you also have the crowd pile over here, which everyone playing is also playing against the crowd. If any of the hazards do damage, and certain cards will cause things to go into the crowd pile. But if that crowd pile is bigger than any of the players' cred pile, then the match is actually a draw, because the crowd doesn't feel like anybody really won the match. The crowd just feels like it was a crappy game. It wasn't a good fight. Both Lannisters, or all four Lannisters, are embarrassed for putting on such a crappy performance by their helmets.
Okay. So the crowd pile is kind of like everyone's opponent as well, because you're trying to be under or over it.
If you're losing, and you don't feel like there's any way to beat your Lannister, which Jay likes to do this, he'll actually put his helmet in compromising positions to make sure a floor saw will hit it, so more will go into the crowd pile, so he can kind of play for a draw.
Okay.
So, yeah.
He doesn't like it when I do that.
I don't like it, no, but you know,
that sounds like a good strategy though.
Yeah, it's part of being a Lannister. It's like, okay, if I'm not going to win, nobody's going to win.
So I see some of your sculpts here. So we can talk about some of them, because I know that you had some for sale on your website. Your helmets. So I think there's there's the regular ones, and then there's the alternative sculpts, right?
Right. So we had Danny Cruz do all of the original characters for us, which he worked on Kingdom Death, of all things, which we didn't know until we were working with him for like a year. We actually flew him out to Origins when we went to our first Origins convention, and we were sitting around having beers one night, and he's like, yeah, man, he's like, this project's really great. He goes, I really liked working on this one. I liked working on Kingdom Death. And we were like, you worked on Kingdom Death? What did you do for Kingdom Death? And I don't remember. He did like 3 or 4 of the sculpt designs for that game.
Okay.
But he did all of the original character sculpts. And then our plan is to each year have a different artist do all 8 motivations from their point of view.
Okay.
So the next artist that we went with was Dom. Yeah. And he worked on, I think he worked on, is it Oathsworn? Was that I think that was one of the recent games that he's worked on. But he went through and he reimagined all of the motivations in more of a monstrous manner, like a lot more savage. There was a lot of Oriental influence to a lot of his designs as well. But yeah, so that's what the alternate sculpts are. So we made it as far as 2, and then our Kickstarter didn't fund, and I wasn't going to pay another artist to do and have another sculptor make 8 more until we actually got the game funded. But the plan is to at least every year pick another artist and have them design 8 more alternate sculpts for each motivation.
Which ones do you like most? I mean, obviously the original ones fit the actual universe more than these.
Yeah.
I don't know. It changes week to week.
Yeah, it depends. Like sometimes I look at Dong's stuff and like it's so monstrous. I feel like that has more of the violence like inherent in Nexus. Like I get more of an idea of like these are genetically engineered to like.
Do you have any of them to show?
Huh?
Do you have any of them to show off or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Here, let me share screen again. So these are Dong's. So these are the alt sculpts. So this is the critic here. That's actually a camera.
Okay.
One of the rules of Nexus was you can't interview and critique a helot unless you're actually doing battle with them.
Okay.
So the gnomes had to come up with a whole new style of helot that could actually conduct interviews and stuff while fighting. But if you look, you can see this was the original art by Dong,
Okay.
which is just kind of nasty and savage.
Because then the one down there with the other one was the original version, right? Further down.
So the original, let's see, these are all alternate sculpts. And so this is the original Criticure. So this was Danny's design.
Okay.
And so that's Danny's illustration, which I just love his pencil work. Like that's all just pencil. And what's crazy is he does it on just like an 8.5 by 11 piece of type paper, like you would shove in your printer. Like he doesn't do anything special. He's just got a pencil and typing paper. It's crazy that's his medium. But these are the original sculpts. So I feel like these have more of the kind of sci-fi fun, nostalgic kind of 80s feel to them, which I love a lot. Like this one right here, the People's Champion is a great one.
Yeah.
But the alternate of that is this, which is like this crazy, four-armed, definitely very, Asian inspired creature.
Yeah.
Which again, there's Dong's art for that, which is just incredible.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so that's really, and all these are hand sculpted, right?
Yeah, these are all hand sculpted by Roberto, and I always type his name. I don't know how to actually pronounce it. Roberto. All
right.
He's amazing, and sometimes I even spell his name wrong, which he likes to call me out on. I'm horrible. I'm just a horrible human being. But he is absolutely incredible. Like his hand sculpts are amazing. I've actually got some pictures here if you'd like to kind of see the process that we go through.
Sure.
So this was the original sketches that Danny did for the Hoarder. So Danny would do like 3 different character designs for us to kind of pick through. And these were the 3 that he gave us for the Hoarder. And it was always like almost impossible to pick. Like what we
say they all look pretty good.
Yeah. And a lot of times, like we had him finish this one and we used it for a barge captain. A lot of times we would have him like do all 3 of his ideas eventually. But with this one, we picked this design because we really wanted something kind of alien looking. And this one kind of had the prop where it's got its kind of wheelbarrow thing back here that's pulling along by a chain. We're like, okay, we kind of like this crazy backpack. There'd probably be some really interesting stuff inside of it. So we picked this, and then Danny would flesh it out.
Okay.
And we fleshed it out. It was like unbelievable. I mean, he'd send us art like this, and we'd be like, holy crap, this is just amazing. We just thought it was the coolest shit we had ever seen.
Yeah.
Then we take that and we send it on to Roberto. Now, Roberto is in France, so Roberto would sculpt stuff. He would send us pictures, how does this look? How are the proportions? His translation of Danny's art was so spot on. Like he did such an incredible job with it. And it was just every piece was like this. So after we got that, we would send it to Valiant here in Wisconsin, and Valiant would take Roberto's sculpt. They would cast it in silicone, and then they would make us resin reproductions of Roberto's original sculpt. So once we got the resins in, we would send them to Den of Imagination, which they're in Poland, and they would actually base it and paint it out for us.
Okay.
And they did an incredible job with them. Like we loved the work that they did with them. And at the time, it was like we didn't know a whole lot about miniatures. Like when I first got, I had Valiant send Roberto's original sculpts back to us, and they were all broken apart because that's that's what happens when they cast them. And I was like furious. Like I called up, how did you break these things? And the guy was like, dude, there's no way to cast these without breaking them. He goes, don't worry, we'll be able to make infinite from the cast that we made. And I was like, oh, okay, man, I'm sorry. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And Den of Imagination was one of those things where, I mean, I sent these things all the way to Poland and back to get them painted. I probably could have found people in the States, you know, to do this.
Yeah.
But we didn't really know what we were doing. And they did such an amazing job. I have no regrets at all about it. But yeah, so they painted them and then they'd ship them back to us. And then I bought this 3D scanner. And what I did is I would take the painted minis and I would scan it. And that's what I'm using in that Tabletopia game. And to do the videos and stuff that we shoot, some of our promotional videos for the game, I use these 3D scans that I did of the miniatures. But one of the other things I did is I took those 3D scans and I sent them back to Roberto, because Roberto over the years has taught himself how to use ZBrush, and he's now sculpting ZBrush as well. So I send him his original miniature scanned back to him, and then he goes through and recreates it in ZBrush. So we have STL files, which makes it super easy to work with the vendors. And it's also going to give us the option for people, because there's a lot of them who, you know, buy these games just for the minis. They just want cool minis. And so we're going to offer a STL pledge on our new Kickstarter, where people can just get all the STL files, all the PDF files of all the, you know, cards and everything, and they can do like a print play version. They can just, you know, print the miniatures, you know, at whatever scale they want to print them at. Because that's another complaint that we get is our helots are really big, because they're big, gigantic, genetically engineered warriors. So our helots are anywhere from like 65 to 110 millimeters high, which works out great for like a boss in like a D&D campaign. But a lot of people wish they were the 35 millimeter scale, or 28 millimeter scale. Sorry. So with the STL files, we figure, okay, people can make them whatever size they want and go to town with them.
Definitely. And so is it going to be all 8 of those, or is it going to be all 16, or the original 8?
So the opening pledge is we're going to have to unlock to get to all 8. So we made our campaign the first go around really, really confusing for people, because we were under the mindset, not really knowing a whole lot about Kickstarter and even marketing for Kickstarter in general. We were thinking like, okay, well, we're going to make like anything anybody could possibly want. So we had a pledge that didn't have the frame in it for people who didn't want to spend a lot of money. And then we had a pledge for a hardcover rule book. And then we had a pledge for, and they were all different pledges. None of this was add-ons. And we had one that was painted and one that was unpainted. And we ended up with like, I don't know, way too many pledges, and people were confused. They didn't know what they were exactly pledging for. And it hurt us. It hurt us a lot because it wasn't straightforward. So for this campaign, what we're doing is it's a 4-player game. So right off the bat, it's going to have 4 helots in it. And we have the frame and all the stuff that makes it really, really cool. And we think like all the best parts of the game are right there out of the box. So it goes to retail, somebody picks it up and they feel like they got everything that makes the game great. Now, depending on how well the Kickstarter does, you know this from all these Kickstarters, the more you buy, the cheaper things are. And as that happens, our ultimate goal is to have all 8 of the helots in that base box package. But if it just barely funds, we won't be able to afford to do that. But, as we hit different stretch goals and stuff, we're going to start throwing more and more things into the box.
And just so the people that are buying it know, they are going to be unassembled. They have to build them themselves, right?
Actually, these are going to come assembled. So for the plastic version that's going to be coming in the box version of the game, everything's going to be assembled. So they have to build them themselves. For people that are that into the hobby, that want that level of control, we have the resin version of all these miniatures right now. They're going to be better detail. They're priced extremely fair. I think most resin miniatures that I see that are our size are at least $30.
Oh, yeah.
We sell all of our resin miniatures for $15 on our website, and they're big resin miniatures. So yeah, we're not gonna have anybody assemble them, because our idea of like when you go to and you buy a board game of Nexus, like we want you to be able to open it up and just start playing.
Okay. So the goal is to get the tooling done for all the plastic models and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But if they want the resin, they can go get them right now.
Yeah, they can go get the resins right now.
Okay. So you also are you going to do a painted version of it, or?
Yes. So we'll do a little sneak peek
Sure.
for the people that are watching this.
Yes.
Go back to the share screen. We'll give everybody a little sneak peek of our Kickstarter page. We're not going to play.
I told you you'd like to share screen.
We're not going to play the video, but we'll kind of go through and give you a good idea of what the base pledge is going to look like. So this is the magnetic frame and how it's going to go together. This kind of shows you their ball magnets, and you can kind of click the frame. So depending on, you can surround the board with it. You can kind of set it up in front of you, whatever you want to do. But the frame's fully magnetic, and that's going to be in that base pledge. And then this is just like, hey, all about what the game is. Just to let people know that these are big minis. Okay. So this is what you get for your $89 pledge. Okay, you're going to have all the coins.
That's a decent price too for a board game nowadays.
Thank you. We're pretty happy with it. You get the magnetic frame. You get the game board. Now, we do have a beer-proof plastic game board. That is not what will come in this base box. So this base box is going to have your standard game board. High quality, but not beer-proof. You're going to get all these miniatures in that base box. So you're going to get these 4 hellets. You're going to get 6 of the floor saws. You're going to get 4 of the floor spikes. You're going to get 4 braziers, 4 columns, and then 4 of the crates. And tons of dice, which some of these dice are used for tracking, and then enough dice for 4 players to play, your location dice, your directional die. You're going to have all your illustrated cards. All these have different purposes and setups in the game, but they're all very funny, really cool illustrations by Michael Recklin. Very much like just old school kind of Warhammer art, garbage meets garbage pail kids.
Yeah.
Like
how many pieces of art do you think you have? Are all 80 different pieces of art, or are there like?
So all of your turning point cards are going to be
art.
Separate pieces of art. There's probably 40 separate pieces of art on all these cards.
Awesome.
That we've done for the project so far. I was checking the other day. We've almost hit 300 pieces of art that we've commissioned over the years working on this project. Like we've got content for forever.
Okay.
Once we get things up and running, because we just keep working on other projects for this while we're waiting for people to catch on to this one. Then these are all your different status tokens that you're going to have for the game, and then you've got your blood and guts tiles. And then the base box is going to come with a 60-page rule book. And this is a little bit of a departure from our original campaign, because our original campaign had like legacy rules and all these things to like mutate and upgrade hellets and stuff like that. Okay. This is just a simple like board game rule book. Like, let's sit down, play a game in Nexus. Here's all the rules you need to go through and do it.
And it's 60 pages because you have art in it, right?
No, it's 60 pages because there's a lot of different things. It's going to have art in it. It's going to have a ton of art in it. But it's 60 pages because we've got a lot of deep drilling that we go down into rules, because kind of like Blood Bowl or anything else, there's a lot of little semantic things that we feel like we need to spell out clearly to people, so they don't argue with each other. There's lots of order of operation type things that we have set up in here.
Now is there an index?
Oh yeah, there's an index. And if you go through the page, here's like,
And we have a lot of the rules on the cards themselves, though, too.
Okay.
yeah, a lot of quick access stuff
Yeah.
where you really will use the rule book very little once you actually start playing. But you can go through, this is a quick little walkthrough with our animated GIFs, where it shows you like setting up the barges and how to fight. But you can go through and people will be able to download the rules. We've got all the rules available to download. They're not laid out yet because we're waiting until after we fund, and then we're going to have a graphic artist go and like really kick it up a notch and make it super sexy. But this is all the rules, very easy to read, very digestible. Then I've got My Ugly Mug doing kind of a 10-minute overview for people who don't want to like just sit down and start reading the rules. They can watch a quick 10-minute video, gives you a good idea of kind of how the game's gonna go.
Okay.
We've got a link to the Tabletopia for people that want to sit down and actually play around with the components and stuff while they're reading the rules. And then we get into our upgrades, which we've got the plastic beer-proof game board, which is great. I highly recommend anybody getting this game pick up the plastic board. It's textured. It really makes the whole thing so immersive.
So I know in your last project, the miniatures had bases that were inverted, right? So that they could stick on. Is that still the case for the regular board?
So the regular board, we're going to make that a stretch goal to
Okay.
board, work with it with the regular game board, but as of launch, it's just going to be a standard game board. But that is something that's a upgrade.
I think he's asking about the recessed bases.
Yeah, that'll be the case with the minis, but the board will also
Okay.
be functional with those recessed bases. But yes, all the minis will have those recessed bases.
Okay.
You can upgrade later and get the plastic board.
Right. Or make your buddy buy the plastic board and you buy the base game. However you want to work it out.
Do you have a video of you pouring beer on the board? No, I'm kidding.
There is a video. If you look at the story of Nexus, I think there's a video. I don't think it's a beer though. I think it's water. Yeah, it's just water.
And at was it Origins? We were pouring water on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were doing
People were
demos.
freaking out when we were doing demos. We were just taking water and just throwing it on the board, and they were like, "Ah!" Like, plastic. And they were like, "Holy crap!" So metal coins will be another upgrade. I couldn't believe how much metal coins were when we were doing this. I really thought they'd be a lot cheaper. We love the metal coins, so we're going to make this available because you really don't need a mold for the metal coins the way that they're made. I don't know how many people are going to be interested in paying an extra $50 to make all their coins metal, but I would.
Well, that's a lot of coins too, so it's not like that.
And then the other is your question. So these are going to be pre-painted. And this is an actual pre-painted sample from the manufacturer. Is it going to be something that's going to win you some kind of award? No, but they're going to be very nice for somebody like me. That's 100% what I would pledge and get, because I'm not a hobby painter. I just want to be able to play the game, and I don't want my minis to be unpainted because I know people look down on me. So for something like, for me, this is absolutely perfect, and they'll paint up all the components in the box, and that'll be a $50 add-on for the pledge.
Okay. And that's for all four of them, or like if it were to get to all 8, that would be all of them?
Yeah, all 8, no matter what the number is in the box, everything in your box is going to be pre-painted.
Okay. Awesome.
And then we've got stretch goals, which is just a little tease, but like you said, for people familiar with our project, they know how much extra content we have ready for this thing and ready to unlock and either as an add-on or to throw in for free into the boxes. We've got hazards that we really want to put in here. The barge beast, the creature pit. The biggest thing that we really, really want to get to is that legacy, that hardcover legacy rulebook. So we can take those 300 art pieces that we have and all of these awesome upgrades and weapons and different mechanics for a legacy version of the game where you can kind of have like a Nexus gangbang, I think is what we call it. So
like
where you get
this campaign.
Yeah. So, kind of like when you're playing Blood Bowl, you have your team and you got players dying, you're bringing new players in and all that. So Nexus is really If we get to do everything we want to do with this game, Nexus is designed to do that, where you can kind of have legacy campaigns with your friends. And then all the rest of this is like reviews from people at Origins, a bunch of quotes. We got a link where people can like really dive into the miniatures and check out all the detail on them. This is a link to the lore where people can find out more about the world. We get a bunch of avatars for people that are into that kind of thing to help us promote. And then we got some old pictures of Jay and I when we were kids looking just awesome. And there's a link here which runs people through like a story of our whole history together, which that's on the Deaver site.
Okay.
This was like the greatest thing ever. When we were at Gen Con this last year, Guar came over to our booth to check out Targ. So you can't see him real well here, but Targ is a 250-pound bronze sculpture that we had done for a Gen Con for people to come by and oogle over. He's pretty awesome and intimidating. And,
Okay.
Guar enjoyed it. And then we do a little nod to our artists because they're amazing. And then shipping and social links and risks and challenges and all that kind of stuff. But that's the state of it right now. I don't foresee it changing too much before we launch. And yeah.
Okay. And you guys, actually, I think my wife said it came in today, but you guys have a book, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that is an amazing thing.
Yep.
So Josh Vaught, who's been working with us since the beginning on this project, he is he's just a great writer. We met him in Mobile, Alabama, at QuestCon. Is that what it was called?
Yep.
It was horrible. It was our first con.
A one and done.
It was a one and done. It was absolutely atrocious. I think the guy got sued like immediately after the con by like everybody that was there. But the great thing that came out of it is we met Josh, and I looked one of it. He's got a book series called The Cleaners, which is super original, super interesting stuff. Basically, it's almost like a Ghostbusters type thing, but they're all undercover as like high school janitors and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great concept. And I picked up his book, and he had given Jay a card, but I bought his book and I started reading through it, and I was like, this guy might actually get us. Like, it's really funny, and he's definitely outside of the box. So we worked with him on a bunch of stuff with the RPG and fleshing out some of our world, even for the board game, writing some backstory for like the different barges and some of the different characters that we made up. And eventually got to the point where I was like, man, I really want a Nexus novel. Like, you know, and we had some story ideas that we kind of pitched him, and one of them he really liked, and he just kind of ran with it. And we now have available on Amazon a book called Blood, Guts, and Glory that I couldn't be more proud of. Like, it's a great read. It's a lot of fun.
Very
proud. Does that involve like a entirely new character, or is it someone that's in the game already?
No, this is an entirely new character.
Yep.
So this is Rags, and he is the lowly nobody who lost everything as soon as he got to the Nexus. He took his whole family's fortune out there because he was going to be a Lannister and he was going to be the next big thing, and immediately just got swindled, lost everything, and now he's scraping guts off a barge arena.
Nexus.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just about him getting everything he thinks he wants, maybe. And
I was waiting for you to use the joke of rag to riches and stuff like that.
Yeah. That plays in there. That plays in there for sure. But man, Josh did such a phenomenal job with this story. It was such a great read, and I thought I was just really partial, you know, obviously because it's our IP and it's our thing. But I've given it to my daughter, who doesn't like anything to do with me, and she absolutely loved the book, and even said that she was like, I was surprised at how much I liked this. It's like, thank you, honey. I gave a copy to my mom. I'm still waiting to hear back from her. Actually, she hasn't talked to me since I gave it to her, so I don't know. We'll see how that one goes. But yeah, we're super proud of that book. It's amazing.
All right. Well, I'll put a link of it in the video when I get it posted.
Okay, cool. That'd be great.
And hopefully it becomes a series.
Yeah.
I want to see where these characters go.
Long term, I mean, I have huge dreams for everything we do. You know, I eventually would like to see this book turned into, you know, a bigger media thing. You know, maybe an animation or something. But you know, we'll see where the world of Nexus goes to.
All right. Well, thank you guys for hopping on and talking to me for this hour. I know it feels like time flew by and all that kind of stuff. Anything else you want to throw in real quick before we part ways?
I don't think so.
No, we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, I feel like people have to be sick of listening to me talk by now.
No, it was a good explanation of everything, and I think everyone will kind of understand the game a little bit more, see where it changed from where it came from. You know.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity, man. This has been great.
But we have a lot of information on our website, a lot of cool.
Oh yeah, we should get kind of salesman-y here at the end, shouldn't we?
Sure.
Yeah. So
well, we spent a lot of time on the website too, so
yeah,
it'd be nice if somebody looked at it.
People come to the website.
But yes, you have a website. You have pictures and what you showed on there.
Things have been going well.
But yeah, Devers.com. You can throw a link to that in there. But there's all types of information there. There's information about the board game, the RPG. There's information about us. All of our artists are featured on there along with their work and links to all their sites. I know there's a lot of people that have followed us that are making games themselves, and a lot of them have reached out to our artists and done like Draco Miniatures. Mm-hmm. I think everything that they're doing right now has been all Roberto's sculpts, and we met them at Gen Con, and they poached our artist immediately. They were like, "Man, he's really good. We're gonna steal him." I was like, please do. I mean, I want our artists to get work. They're like the backbone of this industry, and they're unfortunately not treated very well for the most part.
They have a skill many of us don't have. I can draw stick figures. That's about it.
Yeah. And most of us get into this because of the art, you know. Most of us saw like an amazing picture or something, and that's why we're even into the hobby. And unfortunately, these guys are not paid like that, like they should be. Mm-hmm. So please give our artists work. If you're out there looking for artists, call these guys. They're amazing.
All right. Well, it was good talking to you guys. And we'll see you in your campaign launches. All right.
All right, man. Thanks again.